Welcome back to another episode of the Briefcase of the Barn with me and Gary, a series of the Furious Curious show where we have some real talks about business, Christianity, life, and more. The sponsor of today's episode is Arbonne, health supplements that I take every day. They work really well. Link in the description if you want to try it. For 3 months, you will feel better. All the people that say you won't haven't tried it. So
that would be me.
Yeah.
Don't believe in pyramid schemes. Can't stand them. But it's his show, so he can pick whatever sponsor he wants. I would actually never pick a pyramid scheme for a sponsor.
I wasn't actually picking a pyramid scheme.
It's Arbonne, whatever.
I was using the product.
It's foo-foo dust.
You haven't tried it?
It doesn't. God help.
Try it for 3 months. Did you challenge you? Try it for 3 months.
My wife does say that I have issues because I can basically poop through a straw all the time. So, well, probably mean it the worst of anybody. But anyway,
there you go. If that's what you're struggling with, try it out. I wasn't talking about pyramid schemes. I was talking about a product I use.
I'm just telling you that I do.
Okay. Anyways,
I feel like everything else is going to be less serious now that I talked about my digestive system.
Okay. For Fruit of the Spirit, we're going through.
Oh, wow. We are going straight into the Fruit of the Spirit. Okay. Sorry.
Yes.
Obviously, I do not have it.
No, actually, let's start. We'll skip that. I'm going to go to the podcast with Brian first. So you watched my conversation with Brian McConaghy.
I only ever listen.
Listen, okay.
Just so you know.
Okay.
I'm fascinated by how it's the younger generation. I think they watch YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
I don't go on YouTube very often. I really go into like dark places, watch a lot of like economic Debbie Downer stuff. So,
okay.
But so I listened to it. I listened to it the other night. I went on a trip to Eastern Washington this past week on a hay buying trip with a guy that works with me.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that you were haying.
Yeah, well, I've been haying quite a bit. I hayed this morning too.
Oh.
Yeah, desperate times call for desperate measures.
You just don't have enough guys, or you just don't want to do it?
Short staff. I always say we have a staph infection. Anyways, we we listened to it on the way home.
Yeah.
And
who's we?
Sorry?
Who's we?
Me and Steve.
Oh, okay.
We listened to it. Hard to listen to. Lots of people have listened to that. I don't know how. Have you checked the stats on how many people listen?
Yeah.
Lots.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's at 1,000 views, a little over 1,000 views.
Okay, I meant to share it too. I will share it.
A lot of people that have watched have reached out to me though.
Yeah,
just like blown away.
It makes sense. I mean, I had heard of it somehow over the years of his organization, Ruitenburg, but I had never signed up for subscriptions. I never followed them on social media. That man, and then you would know him way better than I do because you've probably talked to him more.
No, that's the first time I ever talked to him. I knew nothing about him. I went into that conversation blind.
Okay.
Like
you didn't need to say anything either. He's a very gifted speaker.
Yes.
I mean,
yeah,
you did a good job, but it was definitely, he had the ability. My sisters both listened to it and we debriefed the next day. I did with my younger sister, and the conversation with, like I said to her, I said, the man had a gift of sharing, of preaching. Like he preached while he did the podcast. He did a history lesson. He convicted people. Just, he made us aware of, people that are well educated and know history know about Cambodia. And I had heard of that. I'd heard of that organization, and I won't pronounce it. I'll butcher it. But
Ruitenburg.
No, but of the terrorist group that were basically.
Oh yeah. The Khmer Rouge.
Khmer Rouge or whatever it is. Yeah. And there's people that are listening that are like, that's not how you say it. But anyway, so that, like, those were things that was pretty powerful. And then he talked a lot about, even just, he quoted a lot of verses. He shared about witnessing, and obviously not everybody would agree probably with his take. There's people that think you should be more forthright. But I just think he did a bang up job of all of it while, ironically keeping it light.
Yeah.
And probably not intending to, but I just think that he, first of all, you would become ineffective if you were in that space and you got weighed down. God's probably given him the gift of being able to
keep going,
keep perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I had so many more questions. I actually was talking to Trevor about it, and he said he had a buddy that listened to it and said he wished I would have gone more into detail on a few of the things that he was sharing, which I wanted to do, but I just...
It was 2 hours and 13 minutes.
Yeah, but once it's that long, it doesn't really matter anymore if it's 3 hours. People would go back and listen to it, because most people listen to it in 2 settings anyway.
No, they don't. Like, that guy has a gift. You could listen, like, I listened to it straight through.
Okay, yeah. So if it's 3 hours though, then it doesn't make a difference if it's 2, right?
No, probably not. He was very, very good communicator, right?
Yeah.
And no pauses, no ums, just a Gatling gun of information, right? And it's interesting. This is my perspective. and not a lot of people know this, but like I was in prison when Picton was in prison, in the same prison in North Fraser pretrial in the early 2000s. And so
Like you saw him?
Yes. I remember being so we got 1 hour a day of free time. I was basically doing weekends for stuff. And I always went in on Friday at 5 and got out Sunday at 5. And a myriad of people, friends and family, drove me because, of course, I didn't have a license, which is the reason I was in there.
Yeah.
And I remember being, we basically, when they say you got an hour of free time, like it wasn't even, you didn't get to see daylight, but they had to let us walk in the hallway. I remember that. And then it was like 5 o'clock or whenever court was over and his trial was over, and the whole place, the place went to lockdown, and they traipsed the greasy mongrel through there. So it was pretty interesting.
Oh, he was by himself always.
Yeah, always with a group of sheriffs or whatever, right? So that's a distinct memory I have of kind of.
Oh, interesting.
And I remember.
So when you started listening to this podcast, you didn't know that was coming.
I didn't know Picton was coming, and so that was a blast from the past. And then also in the early 2000s, like I unloaded hay for years, like just physically unloaded. I think I posted on Instagram the other day, but I unloaded like 100 ton of hay every day for probably 5-6 years. And at that time, we unloaded next to his pig farm. And we unloaded as he was, so it was just a kind of a crazy time in my life. Oh. And I remember being next while they were excavating and had all the stuff there. And so, yeah, his story, even of that lady, of Selena, I think her name was, is just, yeah, it's really powerful. It was a beautiful thing. And
I loved what I most, well, it was interesting for you because I thought it was way more of a conversation than an interview, which is always my goal, to have conversations, not have interviews. There's distinct differences, but I also want to prepare a little bit as well. And this time I didn't really prepare. I just, for some reason, wasn't ready, and I was like, I'm just going to roll with it. And I find it came more naturally that way. But what I found was the most interesting was his little rabbit trails that we go off of, and where he's just like the lessons in them, like especially
that's what he was good at.
The lessons of like being open about your sin in the church and like the leadership side and those kind of things like that. Like I was just like, you can't argue with evidence like that.
Yeah, he touched on some pretty interesting points, obviously about evangelism and the way that they do work there. He talked about, like this. Yeah. Anyways, I wouldn't want to share too much about it because I think if anyone's listening to this and they haven't listened to it, that's a lot better listen than this is. So you should shut this off.
I mean, listen to that. It is true. The evidence is on the views.
the evidence is on the views. And yeah, the guy's an amazing man and a beautiful story. And he was young. Like I think what I got out of that too, or I would if you're a young guy, you're in your early 20s. That guy was 25 years old in Cambodia, like bringing sea cans of medicine illegally into the country and not even illegally. I think he literally just kind of, the Lord opened up doors and that kind of happened. So it's pretty cool. So yeah, I found it fascinating. And
it's interesting. I interviewed Dave Curry yesterday.
Okay.
And that's like, I think they're probably similar in age to a certain degree. Yeah. But completely different end of the spectrum of type of interview when it comes to like, I mean, Brian dealt with horrors, and Dave is on the other side of like just
he's still dealing with horrors.
Yeah, in the people that he's dealing with, we didn't go into details on those things, but just like his life story and stuff like that.
I see.
Very, very different, but also very cool.
Now, I would say you talk about how you interview people. I mean, I feel like I've told you you're a great interviewer, but I don't think you need to ask. Like, if you have people, good guests on your show like him, you did not need to say much. I mean, sometimes you were interrupting because you felt like, hey, I need to clarify something, or you had, yourself, you're just curious, hey, what about this? Or a little bit of pushback here and there. But I mean, that guy was well-spoken, and obviously he's probably spoken in front of hundreds of thousands of people talking about their organization and everything that he's done. And I'm thinking even as a, just going back to, I don't know, you didn't get into, there's so many weeds you could have got into, but he was probably in front of the court giving testimony over the years. So like just very well spoken, right?
Yeah.
Very.
Yeah. He knows he's been around the block.
He's thinking on the fly. Right?
I think I'll have him back on and dive into some of these different things. So,
definitely, I guess out of that, what's expected to come out of that? If you have an interviewer like that, you have Brian on there, what would your hope be having a guest like that on? Obviously it's interesting. So you want to have interesting people with amazing stories and a great witness, but like, I kind of thought, are people going to the website and signing up for his newsletter? Are they supporting him monthly? Are they?
I don't know. Like I really try to think about the show as like interviewing people and talking to people that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
And like genuinely interested in, and that I'd want to talk to regardless.
Okay.
And just record those conversations. Whatever happens. If you want to check it out, it's on my YouTube page or on the Spotify app. I think it's the title of the podcast is Faith in the Face of Horror.
Yeah. I didn't like your description of jaw dropping.
No?
No, I feel like it's too sensationalized, and I feel like, I mean, it's the most sensational thing you'll ever listen to. Like, it's so powerful.
Well, that's why. It wasn't clickbait.
But it felt underwhelming, and it felt...
Yeah, it is.
I know you're trying to sell it and whatever.
No, I'm not trying to sell it. I think about
these.
these titles and the descriptions a decent amount. Like, I'm just like, okay, how do I most best reflect what this conversation is about?
Oh, it's so hard.
In 2.5 hour conversation.
You're not going to do it justice. No, that's fair.
So,
okay.
Anyways, okay. Moving on to fruit of the Spirit. And the fruit of the Spirit this week is faithfulness. What is faithfulness? I think doing what you say. I Googled it to see what some of the first results were. And one of them said it's actually essentially faithfulness to God is loyalty to him and his teachings, which should shape how we think and act.
What's the first thing you think of when you hear faithful?
In a marriage, being faithful.
Yeah, so do I. That's interesting. Yeah. Also, I listen to Matt Chandler quite a bit from the Village Church in Texas.
Yeah.
A lot of his sermons. I haven't lately, but I did for years. And one time, and I remember exactly where I was driving in the U.S. hauling cows when he preached his sermon, but he talked about how he had just done a funeral of some guy in the church who had died 60, pretty young, I think 60 or something. And he basically, Matt just shared about how this man was a faithful man. And he talked on and on about how this guy, he never stood out. He never did, he just worked his job, cared for his family well. And it was convicting to me. It was kind of like, hey, I always think of like, what kind of things am I doing? What do I need to do? But like, no, like that man. And then he shared at the end, he shared the verse, which many of us know, where it's like, he'd stand before God and God would say, well done, my good and faithful servant, right? Which is what, I want, and all people, most Christians would want. And I think, it's not, we just need, being faithful means doing what we're called to do. And what most people would call, I think, boring. Usually if you're doing something faithful, you're doing it consistently for a long time, and that just kind of goes against our fiber. And so... Yeah, we're looking for, at least me, I'm looking for a jump start.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about it at church, even in leadership. It's like, hey, we're called to be faithful. We're called to preach God's word faithfully. We're called to steward money faithfully. We're all these things without, like, a lot of churches, let's say they never grow. It doesn't mean they're not being faithful, right? Like, God's call and challenge for that person might be that they are faithful in his word, and just the next congregation might be exploding with people, and maybe they're not being faithful. So I think that the word is probably misunderstood by a lot of people, and maybe even by me. I just feel like in my life, I struggle with it. I think being faithful to my wife, I might not struggle in the area of like, fooling around, but am I faithful to her? Am I being encouraging as much as I should? Am I being at home?
Are you faithful to your kids?
I definitely am more than I ever have been. Am I faithful? I don't think I am. No.
What would it look like if you were?
It would look like more intentional time. I have visions of like, some guys do it great. One of my buddies has taken his kids each individually hunting. His oldest 3 kids is for a whole weekend. Like, maybe I don't do something that grandiose, but like, I've thought of like, the other day I took my girls on a breakfast date. It's the first time I'd ever done that. Like, I just need to do way more of that stuff, right? Way more just connecting. I think it's
small. I actually think there's a temptation just to just do grandiose things.
Yeah, totally.
Every 6 months. When I think it's more just like a small amount every day.
Well, you're not wrong. I've always figured it was just getting on the floor and playing Lego with the kids, or my kids like playing the tickle game, and they still talk about it. We haven't played for a while. Like, I should just be doing that with them. They get a kick out of it, right? Like, why am I not?
Yeah.
There's going to come an age where when I play the tickle game with them, they'll give me the...
I actually had it this week when Malachi and Peter were coming to me, and they were asking me like, "Let's go play tickle, Dad." And I'm like,
"Okay."
I just didn't want to. I was just like, I'm just done.
Just don't feel like it.
Don't feel like it. And I don't know. You can't always say yes either, but
no. But I could say no to a lot of other things and say yes more to my kids. So I appreciate the conviction. And with my wife, it's just about being.
You will if you want to.
You will if you want to. Yeah. Ooh. Think about it. You will if you want to.
Your actions show what you believe.
Most of the battles are won and lost between our own ears, not anywhere else.
Yeah. The Bible says it's the renewing of the mind.
Not the wine.
No,
that did happen too, but that's a conversation.
The renewing of the renewing of the mind. Okay, moving on. Proverb of the week. I thought you'd like this one. I thought it was kind of neat.
I was reading it when you texted it to me.
Okay.
Because it's from the day before yesterday. Yeah.
You read the daily Bible
I
reading
read
plan?
the NIV exactly the same.
Oh,
way.
cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah, I don't read all of it though.
Okay. I'm just caught up. I found the last couple weeks hard, and it was just like Job. I was getting bored, and a few other ones. But anyways, proverb of the week: don't wear yourself out trying to get rich. Be wise enough to know when to quit. In the blink of an eye, wealth disappears.
Speaking of Job.
Yes.
Speaking of Job.
Blink of an eye, wealth disappears.
Blink of an eye.
Don't wear yourself out trying to get rich. Be wise enough to know when to quit. Why do you think you shouldn't wear yourself out trying to get rich? And how do you have wisdom when to quit? When to go not too hard?
I always view it as a spectrum. I view everything on the spectrum, right? So like I always look at it like some people are trying way too hard to get rich and others probably should try a little harder. Maybe that's not accurate, but also God has called people to different things. I mean, some people are.
What does it mean? Like, why shouldn't you wear yourself out? And when it says be wise enough to know when to quit.
Well, because you're going to do a lot of things that you shouldn't do if you're pursuing riches, right? You're basically going to, you're either going to, in some sense, you could be dishonest. In my case, I haven't cared for my family well a lot of the time. And I would always have a justification for it. I would always say, oh, my wife, maybe she doesn't want me to work so much, but she likes going on a nice holiday and that kind of BS. But it's like at the end of the day, as a man, we're just responsible for.
It reminds me of the last piece in there. In the blink of an eye, the wealth disappears. It reminds me of Jim Elliot's quote that I hang on the wall there. He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose.
Yeah, and everything on this earth is temporary, right? Yeah. So it's one of the jokes that me and my wife have about moving all the time. And not jokes even, it's pretty serious when we talk to people about it, because people are like, oh, why are you moving? And it's like we in our culture just get so attached even to our homes. People's home becomes their oasis, and it's not bad. It's not necessarily wrong to love where it's probably a blessing to be content where you live. And we love where we live now too, but like, is our entire happiness and everything based on the place that we have? Or like, if we had to leave there and go to another country, could we move downsize to a smaller place? Like, we should be okay with that, right? And I think as temporary sojourners on this earth, we should, if we call ourselves Christians, we should not be too attached. And in our how our culture is, like how nice does the lawn? And I'm like that, right? So, so that's what I got out of this, where it's like, why am I pursuing that, right?
Yeah. I will say that I have experienced like when my previous job, I was making way more money than I make now, and I'm definitely happier now than I was back then. Yeah. And so
they are completely not correlated. So I've had that too. I've had periods where there was great wealth and very tough times, and it has made zero difference in my emotional happiness. I would almost argue to some degree. I mean, there's a lot of stress that comes with financial hardship, and a lot of people, obviously, like, it costs a lot to live now, and it doesn't matter how much money you make, you hardly have enough now. Like, that's just the way it is with how bad inflation is. But yeah, I have always felt that I always question myself now how much of my comfort is based on my material stuff. And a lot of it is, like, if I had to be honest, a lot of it is. It's just that sense of and that's not where our comfort's supposed to come from, right? Yeah. So, and that's what's cool about the story of Job, right? Where he never cursed God, even though it was, and I mean, he was really rich. Yeah. He was really comfortable. Yeah. He had it all, right? And so, yeah, it's a pretty cool story. I don't think I'm Job. I'm not sure I'd be, if I had friends nattering at me and my wife nagging me.
And losing all that stuff.
Yeah, not easy. So,
okay, moving on. Talk to me about the real estate deal you lost this week.
Oh yeah, it's pretty funny. So I had a guy text me, and this is where, like, I mean, it'll be the same thing with this podcast. I'll say something stupid but it's I've been working on all stuff with all these clients, and this one guy's kind of thinking of buying a place, right?
Okay, real estate client.
Yeah, real estate client, right? Great guy. And I didn't even know he listened to the podcast. I mean, that's the thing about podcasts. Anybody can listen to it. It's kind of terrifying if you think about it, overthink it. But it was interesting. He texted me in the morning, hey, give me a call. We got to talk about buying this farm, right? And so I was in a class all day, a realtor class and real estate class, learning, and I get out and I'm like, hey, let's have a chat. So I call him and he's like, oh, it's interesting. I was going to buy this place, but I listened to your podcast at lunchtime while I was working in the barn, and now I'm not so sure anymore. I don't think I'm going to buy anything. I'm like, oh, okay. So I went in the house and he's like, oh, once again, your big mouth cost you a bunch of money. That's pretty typical.
Okay, but did it cost you money? Because what did you say that he didn't, that made him
I just said, hey, we're heading into hard times. We're heading into hard times. Too soon. Don't buy, right? Just wait.
And is that not true?
Oh, I think that depending on your time frame, right? There's a joke. Did I say this in the last podcast, right? The best time to buy was 10 years ago. I mean, I think that
You can't have both though. Like what
You
what,
cannot time the market. You cannot time the market. You will never grab
So-
the top,
but
and
so
you
is it
will
not
never
true-
grab the bottom.
So is it not true that it's not a good time to buy now?
I think it's a great time to buy. If you're going to buy a house in Chilliwack and you're going to live here for the next 25 years, I think you can buy today with confidence. You buy the best deal you can today and you're fine. Do you need to be okay if your house drops by 10 to 20% in the next 9 months? Yes, you do. And if anybody disagrees with me on that, I'd be happy to bet them.
Okay, well we'll clip this in 9 months and react to it.
Yeah, we totally can.
I'm gonna Rhett, if you can send me the clip and I'll send myself an email and snooze it. It'll pop back up. Okay, so define who shouldn't be buying now then, and who do you think should be buying? Because
I guess even on the sense of, in my opinion, I talked to someone the other day and they, like, first of all, people want to live in a nice place. Like people always buy at the top of their budget, right? So like if you go to, and there again, I would recommend going to a mortgage broker before you call any realtor. If you're going to buy a place, go to a mortgage broker. Don't figure out what you can actually afford, but they will give you your number that you're approved for. And that is your top number. And then people will take that and then they will still borrow money from family. And like a lot of people are house poor, right? And I just think, hey, at what point, it's back to the verse, right? Like there's a proverb about it. It's like, what are you chasing? What, can we be content and live in a smaller space and be a little more comfortable? And what does that look like, right? And financial stress is a huge stress in marriages, right? Like even in our marriage where it's maybe not the pressure that it would be in someone else's, it's always an issue. Like when I bring up the credit card bill, like it's an issue. I'm not allowed to bring up the credit card bill. She got someone else to hold her accountable on the credit card. Couldn't handle me ragging on her.
That's not a bad thing.
Anyways, where I was going with that is, if you're going to buy now, just buy something that's in your comfort zone, right? Like I mean, the beautiful thing is now, and beautiful, it's a disaster in a way because it means our economy is heading in the toilet, but like rates are plummeting, right? So like the rate, whatever, if you do a 5-year fix today, I'll bet you in 6 months from now, you're going to wish you hadn't done a 5-year fix. Like that rate is going to drop. And at least that's how it looks for the foreseeable future. I could be wrong, but that's definitely what it looks like.
Do you think we're at the bottom, but you think it's going to drop? The prices still?
I think interest rates are going to drop a lot, and I think prices are going to drop.
So why, if you believe that, why would someone buy now if they could wait 6 months?
Because they'll never time the bottom. Like if you lived with exactly that fallacy of like, and this is where I agree with a lot of realtors, like if you tried to time the bottom exactly, you would have missed every single bottom, and you probably could have afforded a house back in, I think of the real issue is, and this is what people don't admit, that housing prices, and I know exactly because I followed one house in particular, that my very first house I bought in 2003, I paid $150,000 on Berkeley Avenue in Chilliwack, $157,000. That house doubled by 2007. And if you look at the interest rates in that time, the interest rates dropped from probably I paid 6%, I think, at first, up to 2008, the interest rates dropped to 3%, right? And then they kind of bounced around. And that house from 2008 to 2015, 7 years, did not go up one iota. I sold that house for $320,000 in 2015, and then I bought a 100-cow dairy in Manitoba with my cousin, right? So that's 2015. In 2018, we had the boom in real estate. By 2018, that house had doubled again. It was probably worth $550,000, $650,000, somewhere in there, right? All the way into 2019. Then we had something crazy happen where, the government shut down everything because that was the safe thing to do. And then they just, to keep everybody happy and okay with that, they just started printing money like crazy and giving everybody cash, right? So interest rates went from absurdly low at 3.5% or what I think I was paying 3.2% on all my debt in 2019. By the middle of 2020, 21, interest rates were 1.5%. Well, now that house on Berkeley went from $650,000 or whatever to probably at the peak, maybe let's say 1.1, 1.2 million. Now it's back to 850, 900,000, 800,000, somewhere in there. Let's just say between 8 and 900,000.
Still an insane amount.
It's too much money. Nobody can afford it.
Yeah.
Like unless they're coming with gobs of cash. And it's the same with every business that I'm trying to sell.
Well, I think about guys that are like, 20, 25 years old, and they, get married or whatever else like that, or even don't. Like if you need to buy a townhouse is what, $600,000?
Yeah.
Like
you could get one cheaper. You can get a townhouse for $500,000.
Okay, $500,000, but you need to be making over $150,000 a year to get approved.
Yeah, with a good down payment.
Yeah,
with a good down
That's
payment.
wild.
Yeah.
That's like, especially when other places in Canada and especially the US is significantly cheaper and the wages aren't necessarily that much less.
Yeah. and I think I shared this on an earlier podcast, but it's the most important piece because I do believe it's the sign that we are going to crack more, even though people would disagree with me. Now, Vancouver will always be an anomaly, but out in Chilliwack and Hope, like Hope, if you look at the amount of listings in Hope, like who wants to live in Hope? Like it was always it was driven by pipeline workers and rentals for pipeline and all that. And now those places are coming for sale, right? And like, who's going to buy a house for 600 grand in Hope? Especially if a house in Agassiz is in the 600s as well. Like, you're going to move to Agassiz, right? Yeah. And, but houses typically are 3 to 5 times an average income in Canada, right? Which let's just say, I don't know what it is, but it's about 80,000, right? So 5 times that would be 400,000. And let's say that in Chilliwack and the Lower Mainland, it's going to be way higher because it's the Lower Mainland and there's piles of people here. So it's 500,000-600,000, but 800,000-900,000 for
too much.
Too much money.
Okay.
Too much.
Cool. So you lost the deal.
I didn't necessarily lose it. He was questioning himself and me afterwards, and I gave him the same thing I said to you. Like, hey, if you're gonna farm, you're gonna be around for 25 years. You're gonna be doing like, you can't spike the bottom just like you're not gonna spike the top when you're trying to sell at the top. I do stocks too, and it's the same thing. You
don't time it. Dead people do the best.
Dead people do the best in the stock market.
What I mean by what we mean by that is there's stats that people that have passed away that had a stock portfolio that stayed.
That never touched it, never looked at it, never sold a stock.
No, like afterwards, like they're gone, and like it stays in their portfolio for 20 years, whatever, because it's in a trust or something like that, and it just compounding. Explodes.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that with my crypto. Like I put, I think 60K into crypto in 2017, and it went up like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and all said and done, I had made 10 grand like 5 years later because I was like trading and doing all kinds of funny stuff. And then I had a friend that I had set up with an account that same time I got started, and he put $1,500 in. He called me, I think it was in 2022 or something like that. And he's like, hey, Kyle, like you help me set up this account. I haven't been in since we set it up. Can you help me get in? So I helped him get in. And it was 150 grand. And I had put in 60K and he had put in $1,500. Yeah.
100 times. Wow.
Don't touch it.
Don't touch it.
Okay. If you are looking to buy a farm or sell a farm, call Gary. If you're looking to buy or sell a house, call Julius Meljers. He's a local realtor. Great guy. We'll work hard for you.
Yeah. Hustler.
Yes.
Best looking realtor in Chilliwack.
Okay, let's talk about weed.
Weed. What about it?
I don't know. What do you want to talk about? You have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Do you regret posting your on your Instagram story about smoking weed?
No.
No? You did the other day. You said you regretted it.
Yeah, I mean, like, you kind of go in waves of emotion, right? Like, so about how you feel about it. And sometimes you're just like, okay, I don't want this attention. Get it away from me. But, I mean, so I've been smoking weed for 3 years. Rough 2 years.
Would you consider yourself a pothead?
No.
No? Okay.
I don't know how you define pothead. I do smoke too much weed, but... So anyway, I've been doing it for a while, and then when I do this podcast, I was like, it's really important for me to be real. I don't want to like pretend to be someone I'm not, and be who you are. And so we've talked about that, and we were talking about the fact that I smoked weed because you've known that for a long time, and crutch I use, and so that morning it was a rainy Saturday morning, and I was like, what do people do on rainy Saturday mornings? And so I was like, I'm just going to post what I'm doing. So I started with my cold plunge at 6:30 or whatever it was. Made breakfast with the kids, posted that. I made the boys some French toast, did a hike, did another cold plunge.
Sounds like pretty good things so far.
Yeah, it was all good and stuff like that. And then I went and I went outside and I had a little smoke, and I was just like, well,
why am I not posting this?
Yeah, why am I not posting this? And just like I didn't do my devotions that morning, and I kind of like I wanted to post that
for sure. It showed for sure.
I wanted to post that, but I didn't post. I was like, I can't post that. That would be lying. But like it's also kind of lying if I don't post this. I was like, I'll just I'll post it just on Instagram. It's not, and so I
did you post it with a smirk? Your face smirking?
Like did you?
No. Okay.
Anyway, so I posted with a poll, and the question was, does anybody else smoke weed? And I gave 4 options. First was no. The other one was yes or not. No, not anymore. One was yes. One was no, not anymore. Next one was repent, you sinner. And the next one was I'm unfollowing you, which was kind of facetious, kind of a poke, whatever else like that. But I also kind of wanted to see where people's minds would go, because people go to their worst case scenario, right? They come up with a conclusion in their own mind. Yeah. So I posted it and got a bunch of feedback. Some people unfollowed me. Yeah. I had a guy come to my house the following week, and he was upset and thought I was a bad testimony as a Christian, and he had shared his views and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just I'm being real. I didn't share my opinion specifically because, people make judgments way too fast. Like, if you
we all make judgments in an instant. The minute we see something, we just do. That's human nature. That's how our brain works.
Yeah, but especially if you're a Christian and you see another Christian that you believe is doing something they don't. That's
I guess
not good.
here, let me ask you this: do you think Christians should be smoking pot?
Well, I'll get to that.
Okay, sorry.
So if you assuming it is wrong,
Yeah,
and you see another person that's a Christian doing something that you don't like,
Yeah.
in this case, smoking pot, what should your response be to that? Like, if it's out of character, if you're not sure, is it like judgment and being like, what, is it curiosity? Be like, what's going on?
well, the Bible tells us exactly what to do, right?
What?
Well, if I mean, I guess based on the Matthew 18 principle, if somebody is doing something that you feel is wrong, you would in love go and talk to them about it and tell them that you're concerned about them. That would be the appropriate response.
And when you're concerned about them, you're asking, like, how are you doing? Like, how did you start doing this? Like, how does it affect you negatively or positively? Like, are you open with other guys about it? You start off with like learning more before you, because you don't know if it was medical, you don't know if it was any of these things.
I guess it would depend a bit on what the
thing is. But in this case, let's say
there's certain things where if it's something serious,
yes,
a heavy hand is needed to a brother, right?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
You know,
but
what I'm saying?
But
there's a lot of things where it's like, you're right. Maybe you ask them investigative questions, but when really awful things are happening, it's like,
of course,
we're going to go pretty quickly, and we're going to.
Yes, of course. But also, I mean, if it's someone that you don't know at all, like, be careful, because like there might be reasons going on. So I've been open about it with you and all the guys that I'm accountable to for years. Like, I don't have any secrets, and we know the reasons why, and it's actually been super helpful for me. Like, there has been a lot of benefits. I don't just do it just to escape. It actually has had, like, my wife can't even tell when I'm on it. Yeah. Anyways, so that I would say that's that perspective. Like, people make judgments way too quick. Like, just take the time to know. Like, but people's brains go to their worst case scenario. But on the other side is like challenging. Like, is it actually a sin? Is it actually wrong? And I think because weed has been illegal for a long time, and now just only recently got legalized, people have a view of it that it's super wrong. But I would argue it's definitely way less damaging than alcohol, which is fully accepted. I also take meth every day. People have no issue with that because it's Adderall.
Because it's prescribed, yeah.
And Adderall from the doctor. Like, a cigarette has 50 ingredients, weed has 1. Very quickly you can.
Well, you can justify anything. That's what
you can justify anything. That's what I'm hearing. No, I think that
your statement earliest off the cuff, where it's a crutch, is probably the best.
Yeah, it is for sure is a crutch,
right? And so I guess it's like, hey, on that level, no different than many of the things that I do that may look even healthier. They can be wrong. I think we've talked about that before. Right?
But Adderall is a crutch for me too, and it puts me in a different state of mind. Like, I can focus better, I can concentrate, like, I'm less emotional.
Yeah, and prescription drugs is a gray area. That's on every person's conscience, right? I think the difference is, and this is where I would agree with you. I think that weed has a stigma around it where it's like, you're smoking pot. Like, what are you doing, right? I mean, it's been 20 years, whatever, 20-some years since I've smoked pot. I'm sure pot's way more powerful now, I'm assuming. Drugs get better over time.
We'll find out later if you want.
Yeah, no, I'm very happy sober. I got enough problems without smoking weed. But I guess my thought always is, it's like, hey, if we read the Bible and we search the word, it's like, hey, should we need weed?
No, but it says be sober minded. But
so what does that mean?
Yeah, so what does that mean? So I mean, you and I have a conversation when I've been high, and you can't. Sometimes you've been able to tell, but a lot of times you can't tell. Like, I am still
That's only because you're totally whacked when you're sober, though. That has nothing to do with
maybe, but
I state when you're high.
But I think often more clearly. Like, if I have to I love
every person that smokes a lot of weed says that to me, that they are dialed in when they're smoking weed.
Really?
Yeah, it's total BS.
Anyways, yeah. So, well, I guess two more.
I'll justify in one sense, and this is why the way you shared it too flippantly, in people's opinion. So even people that could totally understand that, hey, you're just being honest and being real, and that's a good thing, which I think is a good thing, because people often, you get feedback on the podcast where it's like, oh, the guy seems like, some spiritual whatever. I'm like, no, I don't. Kyle does not want to give that impression. So if he is, you're only catching bits and parts of him. He's a pretty honest guy.
Yeah.
He's really messed up, but he's pretty honest about it. So that's awesome. But I feel like And it's the same for me, where it's like, boy, if I gave off the aura of coming across as holier than thou, that's not good.
I hate that. That's the last thing I want. And that's kind of why it pushes me to.
Well, that's why you posted it. But I guess on the flip side, what came out of that was, wow, here you have, obviously, and this is back to what I've talked to you about before, and this is why I don't think it was wise to share it. You were trying to be on. Well, in general, I'm questioning whether it's wise to share it, because I feel like any time we might lose our witness, or we're going to, if we're going to unnecessarily upset people, is it wise to do that? Is that the right thing to do?
That's not the end.
I know it wasn't, but it's never about what it's just like when my wife says we have a problem, it doesn't matter if I meant to give her an issue. Once she says, hey, we have an issue, we have an issue. Like, so if we intentionally do stuff knowing that it's going to ruffle feathers and piss people off, it's like, hey, is that the Christian thing to do? I think
I certainly didn't think I would kind of piss anybody off.
No, you did, because you put unfollow on the fourth bottom. Like I
knew people wouldn't like it, but pissed off is another thing. If you're getting pissed off about someone smoking weed that you don't really know and have never talked to, then I would say you're not dealing with your own crap.
I get that side of it. I always feel like, even this is why I always can't stand doing it. I'm scared to do the podcast. Like, boy, when you put yourself on a platform where people can watch everything you do, and same with social media, right? Like, if you think of, you're right. If everybody posted the video of their entire day on Instagram, anybody, all the people that judged you, they would be mortified. They would never allow it. That's just a fact, because we're all on the human being tour. Back to the podcast that Brian did. That was actually one of the most interesting points. I'm not going to share it, but the story about how he talked about sin and the fallenness of man.
Yes. This is
people literally don't put themselves in that spot. That will burn a few. I've had that exact discussion with people when horrible things have come out in our community, and I'm like, man, we're all capable of that.
Yes.
We're all capable of that. I mean, they look at me like I'm.
But also like if someone put me on a pedestal and can't believe that I did that, like, I'm thankful I posted it, because now I'm off that pedestal. Like, don't put me on a pedestal. I'm a regular dude. I'm not an elder. I'm not a pastor. I am just average guy. And I have my stuff that I work on, and I work hard at it. And
you're being honest about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that front, I think and that's why I'm okay with it, I guess, in the sense of like, hey, you were just trying to be honest. You felt like you'd be very deceitful if you didn't post it. You posted every part of your day, and then there's this one thing that you're doing. It's like, I'm going to keep this a secret.
Yeah.
That's not being disingenuous. And I agree with the drinking comment the most, because I know the culture we live in, and drunkenness is basically totally okay in it's not in our community, but in a lot of Dutch culture it is, where it's justified. And I mean, there's verses about it. There's the same verse of the homosexual, that whatever sin you got,
or gossip,
like and disobeying your parents.
You want to damage, a lot of people.
Gossip,
like deadly. Like, it's terrible. Like, when everything was going down with me and my wife and stuff like that, like the gossip that happens is just wild. Stories, like
people love to talk about other
they never don't call you.
Yeah,
they just like talk behind your back.
Start nattering to other people about what's going on in your life. Yeah,
it's insane. So, anyways. That's that.
I think it's important to talk about. I think that you got a lot of feedback, right? And I feel like when you and I talked, I was gone, but after you posted it, but I feel like your posture is right, where, hey, you could have shared it better.
I got to be more intentional about it, or said like, hey, I'm going to talk about the podcast in a couple weeks, whatever, or something along those lines. I am doing freedom sessions again, third time, and that I'm sure that'll be one of my drugs of choice that I use. Because I mean, ideally, I don't want to be on Adderall anymore either. I don't want to. Like, I use melatonin to fall asleep. Don't want to do that.
You got a lot of prescriptions. How do you keep them all straight?
I mean, I'm on the human being tour.
Melatonin, how many milligrams do you take?
It kind of varies.
We use it in our family too.
Last night was 10.
Okay. Horse tranquilizer.
Yeah, I use
sleep,
it.
Man, you sleep.
Kids once in a while too. Kids can go to sleep.
Our kids too. We have one child that will not go to sleep if he does not get melatonin. So totally.
My brain's always at like 150 miles an hour though. So.
Freedom, baby.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, we're gonna go to overtime where we talk.
How long have we talked now?
We're at 35 minutes. Halfway through, you blew your nose, so take some minutes off of that, and you were on your phone trying to sell farm or something for a while.
Do some weird deal there.
Yeah. Anyways, overtime. Patreon.com/Furiously Curious. Me and Gary keep talking a little bit more open.
Do we got some question of the weeks going on? We got some more questions?
We might. In overtime.
In overtime, baby.
Okay. Thanks, guys, for watching. We'll see you guys next week. Also, just so you know, this does get published every single Wednesday at 6 a.m. Eastern Time. So if you just mark that on your calendar, know it's coming every week. Hey guys, thanks for listening to another episode of the Briefcase in the Barn. Hope you enjoyed it. If you want to listen to some overtime clips, I'm going to play a few right now, and you can kind of get an idea of what overtime's all about. And if you want to watch those, you can go to patreon.com/furiously curious and enjoy those. So this is what you would get with that. Take a look.
In my experience as an elder and just being in central leadership and doing Freedom Session, we live in a world where everyone is scared to talk to everyone. They're scared of getting ripped. They're scared of someone not taking the criticism well.
How to approach having difficult conversations when care for someone and don't want it to damage their relationship. You can't really help someone that well if you don't take the time to be like what's going on.
In your Christian journey, it's like, boy, you just become so much more sensitive to your shortcomings, right? Like,
Okay, if you enjoyed those, again, patreon.com/furiously curious. $5 a month, and we started these in episode 4 already, so you can go back and watch all the different overtime episodes if you're interested in that. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Please like the videos, subscribe to the channel, rate the show on the different podcast apps so that you can do that on. It goes a long way. Leave a comment on social media. Send some feedback via the website, furiouslycurious.co, in the contact form there. Also, if you have questions or topics you think we should talk about, feel free to shoot me a message there. That's going to be you can send messages anonymously if you want. So, hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.